We've got a great best of show for you today. First, we're going to take you to August 15th of 2015 when we talk a little bit about the Disney Institute. And then we'll take you back in time again a little farther back to August 13th of 2014 when we discuss whether you should partake in the party when we're working at the party. Enjoy. I saw this article in online, and the website was the Disney Institute.
Oh,
and there is a Disney Institute where you can go and study how to learn the marketing practices, the best practices of the Disney Corporation. And the article I found was very interesting in and around the fact that he was talking about perfecting the customer experience. In fact, I think it was called Perfecting the Customer Experience. It wasn't a very long article, but it was very interesting that they're still living in what Walt Disney himself created back in the 40s when he built his park. And it was mostly around the idea that you can come up with ideas all you want, and we can sit around and think this is what we're going to do, and we're going to go do it. And then we'll count the numbers, and we'll have the bean counters figure out whether or not that was right or not.
Figure it out afterwards.
Right. Or you can actually do it and then get in there with those customers as customers, watching that experience, asking questions about that experience. He was not good. He did not like sending out online forms back in the 40s. No, I mean, he didn't like sending out.
I didn't like sending them out back then either.
But reviews, he didn't want to get reviews or things like that. He didn't all the stuff on paper. They still do all that stuff, but that's not really how he built it. He even spoke to this one. I want to read this. I want to read it verbatim because it was very interesting. In the book, and it's called Be Our Guest, is a great book. I've read this as well. And it was quoted to say, when it was suggested that an administrative building be erected for the management at Disneyland, Walt Disney said no. He vehemently opposed it. He said, quote, I don't want you guys sitting behind desks. I want you out in the park, watching what people are doing and finding out what you can or how you can make the place more enjoyable for them. And then he learned that some of his staff at lunch were going off property to their favorite places in California. And he got upset and he said, no more. Your job here is to stay here. Stand in line with the people. Don't go off the lot and eat like you guys have been doing. Eat at the park. Listen to these people. Ask questions. Be a part of it. I even read that he made his own personal apartment that sat in the park over the fire station that overlooked Town Square, which is when you come into Disneyland, into Disney World, that's the first thing you see is Town Square. So he wanted to be able to be up there and look down at the people as they walked in and see their first impression, because their first impression was the impression they were probably going to have for the entire day. And that he puts, if you've never been to Disneyland or Disney World, you can tell that the first impression in that small part in the beginning, in that Town Square, is there's a bustle of the most busy part of the park. Okay, there's always characters up there taking pictures. There's always all kinds of things going on. A little train that goes in there, and lots of things, and balloons and music, and there's a big experience in the first 50 yards of the park in the Town Square area. And he stood there in his apartment and watched that and took notes and made policy over the looks on people's faces as they arrived. And he wanted the same thing from his employees. So what he's teaching here is that all the other stuff that we do to figure out the customer experience is important. You know, you do need to go through all of the science and figure out the numbers, and the bean counters are important. But what's not important, what is most important, is to actually physically be a part of the experience with them and be unafraid to see it, ask questions, let people know that that's what you want to know, and don't make lists of the things that people say, this is great, this is awesome. No, you come back with a page full of things around things that people had a problem with. Every little thing, he said, got written down, and every day they make changes to those policies because of the notes that are still written today from the employees in the park. Pretty extraordinary.
That gives me an idea, like in the context of being a wedding entertainer or wedding DJ or that sort of thing, you know, or wedding MC.
Right.
You know, something incredibly telling would be not necessarily to set up the camera on yourself.
Right.
I mean, we can kind of like Walt, and it's like, you know, with kind of like, don't critique yourself. What's going on with them?
Well, and then don't
right?
let's not get away from the fact that a personal critique of what you look like and how you do things. That is very important.
Oh, I'm not
but
saying
it isn't towards what you're talking about.
Bad, not
Right.
to my point. I'm in the terms of comparison. It's like
Right.
you'll get what you get by looking at yourself and how you're doing it, and and then there's like kind of some performance standards.
Right.
However, if you want to like wonder how is what I'm doing impacting the audience?
Right.
And how engaged are they, or are they just engaged in my head because I think I'm doing all the right things?
Or I'm in my head around my performance and I'm not really paying that close attention anyway, which is really easy to do once you're performing.
Setting up the camera on the audience and like videotaping them so you can hear what you're doing because you know what you do.
Right.
So you're hearing what's happening, but you're seeing them respond to it. What kind of faces are they making? How are they reacting?
Are they paying attention?
Are they paying attention? Are they like chattering about what's happening? Are they, what's going on? Because this is them being very what they think is private about their reacting to it.
Right.
And actually they're being very public about what's happening on their faces and things like that, which could be really telling.
It's very telling. You are creating an experience. And when we perform, if we are not cognizant of the people that we're creating the experience for, then we're really just experiencing it for ourselves and then saying, well, that must be how they feel about it because I was emotionally moved. They must have been emotionally moved.
Right.
Well, it's easy to go there, but it's really much more telling and a lot tougher to watch sometimes to, like you said, turn the camera around. It is very important to do that because I do it. I've done it before. And I also have my assistant that comes with me. Part of their job is to watch how what I do affects what happens in the room. Okay. What's even better though is to go there because the camera don't lie, baby.
Right.
And if you are telling a story or you're introducing people and there's a guy in there picking his teeth or there's a table who they're having their own conversation and they're looking kind of weird because all of a sudden I'm annoyed by this voice, you're not seeing that. Okay. You have to be really good at listening to the room and seeing every last face in a room full of anything over 50 people to really know that you can see that while it happens. So then now you have this. Now what you have to do is get past the ego of, oh my God, I so suck. And then find a way to be able to now give that audience, like Walt says, give the audience what they're looking for, the thing that'll draw them in, and still use your art form to do it.
Yeah, well, and the easiest way to get over that is what we use in the entertainment experience is like what in my performance is working and what isn't working. And in terms of how do you define working, well, you have an intended impact.
Right.
And if you don't have any intended impact, we'll start there.
Right, we'll start there. Write down your intended impact.
Figure
today.
out what impact are you intending to have with whatever it is that you're going to do. In other words, the why of what you're doing.
Right.
Now you know the why. Okay, so now is the why being communicated? Are they connecting and reacting in a way in which you had intended?
Right.
If they're not, well, then you can go back and retool. But you're actually working with things that aren't just like your assistant saying, "Good job, Bill. You did great."
If that's the way most people who hire wedding professionals think, that as a professional, you would not partake in the party because you're a professional.
Well, I think if we're talking about perception, like consumer perception.
Well, that is what she's saying. I mean, this is her perception.
Sure.
The word professional says, you don't come to my party. You weren't invited to my party.
True.
To party. You were paid to work.
Yep. And I in the latter part of my DJ career, I've taken that on to mean the professional. My earlier part
when you
of my
brought a
DJ
ladder.
career.
Oh, I was here earlier. So.
Yeah. I was like, well, sure, I drink, I'll eat, you know what I mean? Like I'll partake with the guests as I'm part of the party. I'm the party guy. I had a lot of kind of like the view about like my role was that I'm the fun guy that they hired to attend the party. Like, we need someone fun to come to the party. Let's pay someone fun to come in and make it fun.
And because he'll be having fun by taking
he'll
advantage.
having fun, enjoying everything that all the guests are having. Right. I've even heard DJs say, well, it's expected that I'm going to drink with everyone to get them drinking.
Right.
Or keep them drinking as a point of view about their role or their
well, and when I worked
at
bars, a chain in Detroit, that was the boss's. That's what he said was, somebody offers to buy you a drink, you say yes, you order the most expensive drink you can, And I don't care if you drink or not, as long as you don't, it doesn't affect your performance, which I thought was very interesting too. But this was back in the 80s. But let me ask you.
So if you have a really high alcohol tolerance, drink all you want. If you get ripped on one, probably should pour it out.
That's pretty much what he was saying.
Yeah.
So that was your, how has that changed since that time for you?
Well, okay.
And if so, why?
Okay,
It's
so
interesting, isn't it?
all right, so that changed when I actually took the time to think about it. You know what I mean? And think about like when I'm coming to provide, I'm being paid to provide a service. So they're paying me to be sharp. They're paying for me to be at the top of my game. They're not paying me for me to go and relax and imbibe. And when you imbibe, you relax.
Right.
You are not, I don't care who you are or what you think about your performance. You do not perform at your best when you're, unless you completely learned how to do what you were doing loaded.
Well, there's not even an unless. There isn't. There's not an unless. That's an argument for an alcoholic, is what it is. Like, oh, come on, man! I drive better when I'm drunk.
Right.
Drive home. Come on! I'm a horrible drinker. Well, I'm a horrible driver when I'm sober.
I'm sorry.
Put a few drinks into me and I do great.
As an aside, there is a study that says whatever is learned impaired is best. Like if you get impaired while you serious.
What study is that?
If you're studying for a test and you're impaired while you're studying, you should be impaired when you take the test.
That cannot be true.
Because you will actually perform better and recall better in the impaired state. Now that's not a justification for what we're talking about.
That cannot be true.
But you'll Google it. You'll see.
I'm going to find out what.
But that has
drunk
nothing to do with
scientists
what
came
we're
up with that
talking
sucker.
Broadcasting from high atop planet Earth at a rate of 96 kilobytes sampler per second over the interweb in an effort to stop glorifying being busy. This has been an entertainment experience production.